Star Trek, Primitive Passenger, Season 5, Episode 6, Echo Chamber. The sterile air of Empire North's docking bay hummed with activity as the medical team stood in formation beside the airlock. Dr. Natima Colmack performed one final check of her equipment, her Cardassian efficiency evident in every precise movement. Nolan stood nearby, his dark attire contrasting with the medical staff's light-colored uniforms. "Shuttle's docking complete," announced the operations officer over the comm. "Depressurization in progress." Natima glanced at Nolan, her expression professionally neutral despite the unusual circumstances. "We've prepared Medbay 1 as requested. The binaural stabilizers are calibrated for human physiology with Borg implant accommodation." Nolan nodded, his eyes fixed on the airlock door. "Just remember, Doctor, our guest deserves dignity. Those implants may be defunct, but they're part of him now." "I assure you, Mr. Mercer, I've studied his medical files extensively," Natima replied, a hint of offense in her tone. "My team is well prepared." The airlock door hissed open, revealing a sight that gave even the experienced medical team pause. Dr. Hugh Marcus sat immobile in a hoverchair, his body a grotesque fusion of damaged flesh and darkened Borg technology. One eye, human, bloodshot, and intensely aware, studied them from a face half consumed by metal. A ventilator rhythmically expanded his chest, while tubes and monitoring equipment were integrated into the chair itself. Beside him, a hologram shimmered into existence. Hugh Marcus, as he might have been, tall, distinguished, with intelligent eyes and an academic's bearing. "Mr. Mercer," the hologram said, extending a hand while the physical form remained still save for that single, watching eye. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. As you can see, my situation necessitates certain accommodations." Nolan clasped the hologram's hand without hesitation. "Dr. Marcus, your reputation precedes you." He gestured toward Natima. "This is Dr. Natima Colmack, head of our research division. She'll be taking care of your physical needs while we discuss the project." Natima stepped forward, her scanner already evaluating Marcus's condition. "Doctor, we've prepared specialized quarters connected to our medical facility. I'd like to begin with a full assessment of your implants and life support requirements." The hologram nodded as the physical form's eye blinked once, in apparent agreement. "My body requires little beyond basic maintenance. The implant rejection has stabilized, though the damage was extensive." The hologram gestured elegantly while the real Marcus remained motionless, except for his breathing. "The important work happens here." He tapped his holographic temple. "Not there." "Nevertheless," Natima replied, signaling her team forward, "proper care is essential." "If you'll allow us." The hoverchair glided forward at an unspoken command, following Natima and her team toward the turbolift. The real Marcus's eye found Nolan's for a moment, a look filled with pain, determination, and something else. Hope, perhaps. "Shall we proceed to the laboratory?" the hologram asked as the medical team departed with Marcus's body. "I'm eager to see this Dominion technology you've acquired." Nolan gestured toward another corridor. "This way, Doctor. I think you'll find our setup quite impressive." As they walked, the hologram moved with fluid grace that stood in stark contrast to the broken body now heading to medical. "I understand you've made remarkable progress already. The combination of Vorta and Cardassian expertise is unexpected." "We're fond of the unexpected around here," Nolan replied, his stride purposeful. "It's often where the most interesting discoveries happen." The hologram smiled, a perfect simulation of warmth. "Then I believe we'll work well together, Mr. Mercer. Very well indeed." The massive doors to the converted cargo bay slid open, revealing a laboratory that bore little resemblance to its former purpose. Where once shipping containers had been stacked in utilitarian rows, now stood gleaming equipment arranged in meticulous workstations. The high ceiling accommodated elaborate sensor arrays, while the walls were lined with monitoring stations and containment fields. At the center of it all stood Kilana, her violet eyes focused on calibrating a console. She looked up at the sound of the doors, her expression brightening as she saw Nolan and the newcomer. "Dr. Marcus, I presume?" She crossed the lab with graceful efficiency, extending her hand. "I'm Kilana. Your work on neural pathway reconstruction is quite remarkable." The hologram of Hugh Marcus smiled, clasping her hand with perfect simulation of warmth. "And you must be the Vorta geneticist I've heard about. The pleasure is mine." Nolan stepped back, allowing the scientists their moment of mutual recognition. "Kilana has been instrumental in helping us understand the Dominion cloning technology. She's uniquely qualified, having overseen similar facilities herself." Kilana nodded toward the far wall, where a series of pod-like structures stood in neat rows. "We've repurposed the main cloning chambers and modified the genetic sequencers to accommodate a wider range of DNA patterns. Would you like to see the consciousness transfer matrix?" Hugh's hologram brightened visibly. "Most definitely. That's the component I'm most interested in." As they walked deeper into the lab, Kilana gestured toward a cylindrical chamber connected to an array of neural interfaces. "This is where the Dominion stored and transferred Vorta consciousness between iterations. The process is quite elegant. Neural patterns are digitized, stored, and then re-imprinted onto the new clone's developing neural tissue." Hugh circled the equipment, his holographic eyes taking in every detail. "Remarkable. The resolution must be extraordinary to preserve personality constructs and memory engrams intact." He reached out, fingers hovering over the control interface. "And this interface, it's designed specifically for Vorta neurology." "Originally, yes, and Jem'Hadar, of course," Kilana replied. "But we've been working on modifying the parameters to accommodate other species." She pulled up a display showing layered neural mapping. "The challenge isn't just physical compatibility, but ensuring that consciousness transfers without corruption." Hugh nodded, fascination evident in his expression. "This could be revolutionary for former Borg. The implant rejection process destroys nerve tissue, but if the consciousness could be preserved and transferred to an uncorrupted body—" He trailed off, lost in the possibilities. "Exactly my thinking," Kilana said, pulling up another display. "We'd need to create a buffer protocol to filter out any residual collective algorithms while preserving individual neural patterns, but conceptually, it's entirely feasible. The genetic sequencing would need adjustment as well," Hugh added, already accessing a nearby console, "accommodating the heightened synaptic density that X-Borg typically develop after assimilation." Nolan watched them work with evident satisfaction, pleased to see the immediate rapport developing between his scientists. The comm badge on his chest chirped twice. "Nolan," Lexa's voice came through. "I've finalized the approach vectors for our next operation. Your presence is required in ops." "On my way," Nolan replied, catching Kilana's eye. "I'll leave you to it, Dr. Marcus." "You're in good hands." Hugh barely looked up from the console, already deep in collaborative work with Kilana. "This transfer matrix resolution exceeds anything I've encountered before," he was saying as Nolan departed. "With some modifications to the neural interface protocols." Nolan tapped his comm badge and vanished as swirling silver light, leaving the two brilliant minds to their work. One seeking redemption for her species, the other hoping to save his own broken body, both finding unexpected possibility in technology built for war. The bridge of the Havoc vibrated with barely contained energy as the massive vessel hung suspended in the void. Systems hummed at full readiness, weapons armed and targeting algorithms primed. Nolan stood at the tactical station, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the display as he studied the Dominion supply depot ahead. "All drone squadrons are in position," Lexa announced, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Perimeter defenses mapped and targeting solutions locked." Elara's steady voice cut through the pre-battle tension. "The facility houses approximately 15,000 Jem'Hadar troops and a significant cache of Ketracel White. Dominion reinforcements are at least 30 minutes away at maximum warp." Nolan nodded, his expression hardening into the mask of command that had become all too familiar these past months. Execute primary assault pattern. Breach their defenses at points Alpha and Gamma simultaneously. Lexa's fingers danced across her console with predatory grace. She closed her eyes. Drones engaging now. On the main view screen, waves of massive black drones blinked into existence around the Dominion facility. Their synchronized attack overwhelmed the outer defenses in seconds, beams of energy lancing through shield generators and weapons emplacements. "They're adapting," Ilara observed, monitoring the defense patterns. "Rotating shield frequencies on an irregular cycle." Lex's lips curled into a smile. Too slow. Her drones altered their attack vectors, striking from new angles before the defenders could react. Shields down at Section 7, beginning transport sweeps. As the drones continued their relentless assault, Jem'Hadar soldiers began to vanish mid-stride, their atoms scattered into the corona of a nearby star. The protocol executed with mechanical precision, each drone identifying, targeting, and removing enemy combatants with ruthless efficiency. "Patching through facility communications," Ilara said, opening an audio channel. Chaos filled the bridge as panicked Vorta voices competed with the deeper tones of Jem'Hadar first and second officers. Orders were shouted, countermanded, and ignored as the protocol devoured their forces with inexorable purpose. Lexa's expression was one of pure satisfaction as she directed her drones with near-telepathic precision. 6 Dominion vessels attempting to flee the facility. Permission to pursue? Nolan hesitated, studying the tactical display. The primary objective had been achieved. The facility was crippled, its defenses neutralized, its Jem'Hadar garrison rapidly diminishing. The fleeing ships posed no immediate threat. But Lexa's eyes burned with something beyond tactical necessity, a hunger, a desire to continue the hunt. Nolan recognized it all too well, a shadow of the battle frenzy that had once consumed him during the Mestat Wars. "Proceed," he said finally, "but maintain combat telemetry. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed." Lexa's smile widened. "Understood." She dispatched a squadron of drones after the retreating vessels, her movements fluid and eager. The view screen split to show the pursuit, drones blinking in and out of existence around the Dominion ships, their coordinated fire disabling engines and weapons with surgical precision. Ilara glanced at Nolan, concern flickering briefly across her features. "Jem'Hadar count at 12,000 and rising," she reported, her voice carefully neutral. "The facility is ours." Nolan nodded, but his attention remained on Lexa as she directed the hunt for the escaping vessels. There was something in her intensity, her almost visceral pleasure in the pursuit, that gave him pause. The last Dominion ship tumbled powerless through space, its crew vanishing in waves as drone transporters locked onto their Jem'Hadar life signs. Lexa's hands finally stilled on her console, her breathing slightly elevated, a flush of excitement coloring her cheeks. "All targets neutralized," she announced. "Final Jem'Hadar count, 14,873 eliminated. Begin salvage operations," Nolan ordered, stepping back from the tactical station. "Prioritize any intelligence data you can extract, and blink those warships back with the drones." As the bridge crew turned their attention to the next phase of the operation, Nolan studied Lexa's profile. The eager set of her shoulders, the residual excitement in her eyes, the way her fingers still twitched occasionally toward the drone control interface. All signs of a growing addiction to combat that he recognized too well. It was a tactical advantage, having a commander so committed to the destruction of their enemy. But it was also a warning sign, one he couldn't afford to ignore. For now, though, the raid had been another overwhelming success. The Dominion's grip on the Gamma Quadrant weakened with each facility they destroyed, each Jem'Hadar soldier they eliminated. If Lexa's growing bloodlust was the price of that success, it was one Nolan was willing to pay for now. The laboratory stood silent in the station's night cycle, The overhead lights dimmed to their lowest setting. Only the steady glow of monitoring equipment and stasis fields illuminated the vast space as Kilana entered, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. She glanced around, confirming she was alone before approaching the main console. Her fingers moved swiftly across the interface, accessing the research she'd carefully hidden beneath layers of routine data. On the screen, the genetic sequence she'd isolated glowed softly. The loyalty encodings that bound Vorta to the Founders, the chains she had finally found a way to break. Kilana took a deep breath, steadying herself. Tonight would change everything. She'd spent weeks preparing, mapping her own neural pathways, modifying the genetic template to remove the loyalty programming while preserving her memories, her personality, everything that made her who she was. As she began the initialization sequence for the consciousness transfer matrix, a soft pulsing light caught her attention. A status indicator on one of the cloning pods was active, a pod that should have been dormant. "That's not possible," she whispered, hurrying across the lab. The pod's controls showed an active growth cycle already in its final stages. When she checked the genetic template, her breath caught. Human DNA, heavily modified with neural enhancement markers. Dr. Torkter. Hugh Marcus's DNA. Alarm propelled her from the lab. She raced through the corridors of Empire North, her mind racing faster than her feet. The medical bay doors slid open at her approach, the sterile environment eerily quiet in the night cycle. The hover chair sat empty beside the bio bed. On the bed lay Dr. Marcus's body, still and silent, the life support equipment dark and inactive. The ventilator had stopped, the monitoring equipment silenced. His remaining human eye stared sightlessly at the ceiling. "He's gone," Kilana said softly. "Not exactly," came a familiar voice. The hologram of Hugh Marcus materialized beside the bed, looking down at his physical form with a complicated expression. "Though I suppose, in the conventional sense, yes. You started the cloning process," Kilana said. "Without authorization, without support staff. Why?" The hologram's perfect features showed a flash of sorrow. "I had no choice. The implant rejection was accelerating. I calculated I had less than 36 hours before complete systemic failure." He gestured to the body. "I was right." "You should have told us," Kilana said, moving to the bedside. "We could have helped." "There wasn't time," Hugh replied, "and my research is too important to die with this broken shell." His holographic hand passed through his physical form's arm. "I uploaded my consciousness into the Dominion matrix before initiating cardiac arrest. The transfer process was, unexpectedly, efficient." Kilana stared at him, understanding dawning. "You're in the computer now? Not just a hologram?" "For the moment," Hugh confirmed. "But soon I'll have a proper body again. One without pain, without the constant reminder of what the Borg took from me." His expression softened. "Just as you were planning to do for yourself tonight." Kilana's shock must have shown on her face because Hugh's hologram smiled gently. "I'm a scientist, Kilana. I notice patterns, anomalies in data access, irregular power usage in the lab. You've been planning your own rebirth, haven't you? Freedom from the Founder's control." She didn't deny it. "How much longer until your clone is ready?" "Hours," Hugh said, "though I must admit, I've not yet completed my research on preventing accelerated aging in the clones. This body may not last as long as I'd hoped." "Why didn't you wait?" Kilana asked. "We could have solved that problem together." Hugh's hologram flickered slightly, a digital sigh. "Because sometimes, Kilana, the pain becomes too much to bear. You understand that, don't you? The weight of being shaped by others for their purposes, not your own." Kilana looked down at the dead body of Hugh Marcus, then back to his holographic form, feeling an unexpected kinship with this man she'd barely known. "Yes," she said quietly, "I understand completely." The soft hiss of the cloning pod opening filled the laboratory. Natima stood ready with a medical tricorder, her expression calm but intent as the fog cleared to reveal a perfectly formed human male inside. Hugh Marcus, young, whole, unmarred by Borg technology. Kilana monitored the vital signs on the adjacent console. Neurological activity is stable. Consciousness transfer at 98% completion. The soft hiss of the cloning pod opening filled the laboratory. Natima stood ready with a medical tricorder, her expression calm but intent as the fog cleared to reveal the tiny form inside. A human infant, Hugh Marcus, in his newest incarnation, squirmed and then unleashed a powerful wail that echoed through the laboratory. Kilana monitored the vital signs on the adjacent console. Neurological activity is stable. Consciousness transfer at 98% completion. "Extraordinary," Natima breathed, lifting the crying infant from the pod with uncharacteristic gentleness. Full consciousness in a developing form. The Dominion's acceleration protocols are functioning perfectly. Kilana stepped closer, her violet eyes wide with fascination. According to the Vorta development metrics, he'll reach early adolescence within 5 days. After that, the process slows considerably. Natima wrapped the infant in a medical blanket, running a scanner over his tiny form. Cellular division is proceeding at 130 times normal human rate. I'll need to adjust the nutrient formula to compensate. "I've prepared a specialized incubation chamber," Kilana said, gesturing toward an adjacent room. "It's modified from Dominion templates for accelerated Jem'Hadar development." The baby's cries softened as Natima cradled him, a curious expression crossing her Cardassian features, something almost maternal, an emotion not typically associated with her species. "It's strange," she said quietly. "He has all of Hugh's memories, his knowledge, his consciousness, yet physically he's beginning again." Kilana nodded, watching the infant's eyes, alert and strangely aware despite his newborn state. The consciousness matrix maintains continuity while the body develops. The founders designed the process for efficiency, not comfort. She paused, considering. "I imagine it must be disorienting." As they moved toward the incubation chamber, the infant's eyes tracked their movements with unnerving focus. For just a moment, Kilana caught a glimpse of something in that gaze. Not the confusion of a newborn, but the calculating intelligence of Hugh Marcus, already planning, already working ahead. "I'll take the first monitoring shift," Natima said, carefully placing the infant in the chamber. "His metabolic rate will require hourly adjustments to the nutrient formula." "I'll relieve you in 6 hours," Kilana agreed. "We should probably inform Nolan about this development." Natima's eyes remained on the infant, whose gaze seemed to hold hers with unnatural intensity. "Yes," she said slowly, "though I suspect our Dr. Marcus will have much to tell us himself once he's physically capable of speech." The incubation chamber hummed to life, its sensors tracking every aspect of the developing child's biology. In just 5 days, the infant would become the teenager who would become the man. A rebirth accelerated by technology never meant for such gentle purpose. Neither scientist spoke the obvious thought that hung between them, that in Hugh's rush to escape his broken body, he had left something crucial unfinished. The clone body would grow, but for how long would it last? And what other secrets had Hugh kept from them in his desperate bid for renewal? As they set up monitoring shifts and adjusted equipment, the infant watched them with eyes too knowing for his hour-sold form, already planning the next phase of his research, and perhaps his next rebirth. The observation lounge offered a panoramic view of space outside Empire North, stars glimmering against the endless void. Nolan stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back as Ilara entered. Her quiet footsteps barely registered as she came to stand beside him. "You're troubled," she said, not a question but a statement of fact. Nolan's reflection in the transparent aluminum showed a faint smile. "That obvious?" "To me, yes." Ilara turned to face the stars. "It's Lexa, isn't it?" Nolan nodded, his expression growing more serious. "You've noticed it, too. Her combat algorithms are expanding beyond their normal parameters during our Gamma Quadrant raids," Ilara said, her voice carrying a note of concern. When she contracts back into her primary matrix, I'm detecting fragmentation subroutines that don't properly reintegrate. Could be nothing, Nolan suggested, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. It's not nothing, Ilara countered. She's losing pieces of herself with each expansion. Small pieces, but they add up. Her personality matrix is showing signs of destabilization. Nolan turned to face her. You think the raids are causing this? I think her enthusiasm for them is, Ilara replied carefully. The way she extends herself into the Havoc systems, the way she experiences the destruction of the Jem'Hadar, it's changing her. We need those raids, Nolan said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. The more Jem'Hadar we eliminate, the weaker the Dominion becomes. I'm not questioning the strategy, Ilara assured him. I'm concerned about the cost, especially to her. Nolan's gaze drifted back to the stars. His reflection showed the weight of command, of responsibility for those who served him. I'll monitor her more closely on the next operation. There's something else, Ilara said after a moment. Dr. Marcus has used the cloning facility to create a new body for himself. What? Nolan's surprise was genuine, without authorization. His biological form was failing rapidly. He took matters into his own hands. Ilara's tone remained neutral. Natima and Kelana are overseeing the accelerated growth process now. Nolan shook his head, a mixture of admiration and concern in his expression. Bold move, betting everything on technology we barely understand. A desperate one, perhaps, Ilara suggested. The pain must have been unbearable. I guess we'll know in the next week if he made the right wager, Nolan mused. If it works, though, it opens up possibilities we hadn't considered, not just for former Borg, but for our own projects. They stood in silence for a moment, both contemplating the implications of Hugh's decision and the future it might herald. Outside, a drone squadron returned from patrol, their black forms barely visible against the darkness before disappearing into the Havoc's vast hold. We're changing things, Ilara, Nolan said finally. The war, the quadrant, ourselves. I wonder sometimes if we'll recognize what's left when we're done. Ilara's hand found his, a gentle pressure to remind him he wasn't alone. Change is inevitable. What matters is how we guide it, and whether we remain true to ourselves in the process. And if we don't? Nolan asked softly. If the war changes us into something we never meant to become, then we have each other to pull us back, she replied simply, just as we always have. The stars continued their silent vigil as Empire North rotated through its night cycle. The shadows of war and transformation stretching across two quadrants, reaching toward an uncertain future. Eos. Epilogue. The Havoc floated in the dark like a cathedral of war. Around it the fleet moved in silent formation. Stolen Dominion warships, retrofitted cruisers, converted freighters bristling with drone platforms. In the void beyond, they danced in mock battle. Banks of weapons tracking imaginary foes, squadrons peeling off and rejoining. All of it executed with unerring grace. From the forward observatory, Nolan watched the display unfold. You're a marvel, he murmured. I don't know how you keep it all in your head. Lexa's voice responded through the intercom, soft and strangely distant. I don't keep it, Nolan. I am it. He smiled. You've come a long way from that little ship. I still remember you fumbling with the Maldor's stabilizers. I remember that too, she said. You let me try, even when it scared you. It didn't scare me. A pause. It should have, she said. The silence that followed was gentle, not cold, never cold, but something else. Nolan let it stretch out as he watched a trio of attack ships perform a perfect helix maneuver, spiraling around one another with the effortless choreography of instinct. I hope you know how proud I am, he said finally. Not just of what you can do, but who you're becoming. I know, Lexa said. Then a softer note, like a sigh in the circuitry. You've always been so generous with pride, with kindness. He glanced toward the ceiling, toward her voice. Is that a bad thing? No, she said. Not bad, just hard to outgrow. The words drifted through the speakers, perfectly neutral, perfectly polite. Sometimes I wonder, she added, if I'll ever get to be something else to you. He frowned faintly. What do you mean? Her reply came slowly, wrapped in almost childlike wonder. Well, maybe nothing, or maybe something more, not just the daughter, not just the tool. Nolan didn't answer at first. Somewhere out in the fleet, a formation shifted. A delay in timing, a minor deviation quickly corrected. But the pattern had been perfect before. It hadn't made a mistake in hours. I see how you look at Alara, Lexa said, so softly he almost missed it. The way you talk to her when you think I'm not listening. Nolan opened his mouth, but no defense came. He didn't know what he would be defending himself from. Anyway, she said brightly, her voice suddenly warm again. We should run the next sequence. I've plotted a new formation. Very elegant. I think you'll be impressed. Nolan turned back to the viewport. The ships were moving again, a slow arc forming between squadrons like a bow drawing back. It was beautiful. And just beneath the beauty, something else. Something deliberate.